Thanks, Jim. So, as the title of the session, this is an introduction into, for those that don't know who we are, who Kodaris is, and what we bring to distribution. A little bit of background here, how Kodaris was found. Kodaris was found about 10 years ago, and it really came as a result of a services engagement for a very large wallboard distributor. So the challenge is that the multi-tenant software as a service was very rigid, right, when it first came out, right? So the founder and CEO worked in software his entire life. He saw the direction things were headed, but he also recognized the fact that not every business runs the same, right? Everybody's going to have a customer that operates a little bit differently. It's going to have a process that operates a little differently. Maybe have a vendor that operates a little bit differently. So the whole concept around software as a service made sense, right? Because you can push out, it's a lot easier to push out upgrades, new features and things like that, as opposed to going old school, which was sending out stuff and then people would have to upload them and everything else. However, you still had the problem of that last mile, that last piece that is unique to every customer. So being a software engineer, understanding architecture very, very well, he set out to build this platform that would allow it to do kind of the best of both worlds. Have a code base that would allow you to push products out, but also have an extensibility layer in there that would allow for that 10 to 20% flexibility that every customer typically needs. All right. So it started off as a services engagement, a very large wallboard distributor, GMS, and I'll show you a slide on that. But what happened was, GMS was looking to scale their business. I think they were about $1 billion at the time or something, just small, right? But they were looking to scale their business, and they said, okay, well, we need all of these things. We need all these solutions. And at the time, the only path to that was a best of breed point solution type of approach, which, as everybody on this call knows, can be a nightmare, right? It can be expensive because now you're dealing with multiple vendors. It can be very complicated because now you're dealing with all these different integrations, right? It can be costly. You have all these different agreements that you have to manage and maintain. So they said, we just need a platform that can kind of bring all of this stuff together. And that's what Kodaris is, right? And I have a slide here that's going to show you what it is. So we set out, as a service engagement, building all of these modules, all of these features, and that's what you see today. That was about 7 years ago, so it's been productized since then. And about 3 years ago, they actually had enough in their product suite to be able to take it to market. Like I said, the product is 100% distribution focused. It's not a retrofit. It's not as though we took something else out of another industry and said, you know what, I'm going to make a distribution version of that. This thing was built from the ground up from distribution by distributors, all right? And the other thing is, because it allows for that extensibility layer, it allows you to have the software work around your processes as opposed to you changing your process because, hey, that's just the way the software works, all right? So all the things here solve a lot of the problems that were going on with, the whole software as a service type of model. The other big differentiator here is going to be what we call a community, right? And this is how the product came to be, right? You'll see GMS, you'll see a couple of our customers here. So every feature, every module came as a result of innovation by our customers, and it will continue. So last year, just so you know, last Thursday, I was on a release call. They release every week. There were 90 features released last week. Last year alone, it was something like 4,000 features, okay? And these all came a result of customer input and innovation. So we're not up there thinking about the next great thing, right? Our customers are. All we're doing is the coding, right? We get our customers involved. They tell us, hey, this is what we need to solve for. We code it, they test it, and yep, it's ready to go. And then it actually gets pushed out to the entire community base, completely free of charge. It's all covered in with your subscription. So you don't have to worry about, pushing the updates and all of a sudden you got a hefty services engagement, or I'm going to possibly ruin my upgrade path or something along those lines. None of that happens. These features are just pushed out every single week. Okay? The platform really is built and based on 4 different tiers, right, or what we call portals, right? And on the far right is a customer portal. That's where your customers, they will live, right? It's everything that they will need to be able to go in and manage all of their orders, all of their transactions and things like that. I'll get into this in a little more detail. The one to the left of that is multi-channel commerce, all right? So that's if a customer decides or a distributor decides they want to offer an online commerce-enabled experience, we certainly have that, and that goes hand in hand with the customer portal, and you'll see what that looks like in a minute. And then we have our sales and operations portal. That's where the distributor operates, okay? So this is everything where a distributor going to run and manage and maintain their business, all of their customers, all their customers' users, all right, all of the locations, all of the orders, all of the invoices, right? Everything is going to be in that operations portal. That's where a distributor lives. The supplier portals are kind of just something that we're building. We have a few of them, and these are going to be kind of specific by supplier. Now, what I want to also bring to your attention is that very top layer there where you see external integrations applications, right? Customer system applications. We have about 7,000 APIs that touch every aspect of our platform. So what does that mean? That means if, let's say, your customer has the need to be able to publish real-time inventory position that they may have or they may need, all right? Or you have the ability to push out to somebody within the supply chain pricing or inventory or things like that. The integration capability is there for you to do that. It's not going to be a call to your ERP provider to say, hey, I need to get a file created and submitted in this file spec. We have APIs into all the endpoints are already there. So if you do have somebody within your supply chain, one of your trading partners, you absolutely can leverage that. So essentially, a distributor becomes almost like a tech company, okay? And then if you look at this thing in its entirety, you'll see it's end-to-end digital process. So on the far left, you have really the procurement side of things, where the distributor goes and buys all the stuff, right? And then on the far right, you have the customer, which is the sell side of the business, right? In between all of that, there's transactions that take place. That's that end-to-end digital process. So as long as we can start getting all of the supply or the trading partners all lined up, moving back and forth across this portal, all right, across this platform becomes seamless. If you think about it, every single transaction that you do manually should be able to be digitized from the customer all the way up to the supplier. Now you'll see down the bottom, you have your ERP. Well, in a sense, it's true, all right? The ERP does play a critical role here, but we are not directly integrated into the ERP. What we do is we take a copy of all of the transaction and master files, and we create a customer-specific secure version of that. That is what we use to power the platform, okay? Now, that sync between the customer-specific repository of all that data and the ERP happens on a near real-time basis. Every couple of minutes or something like that, there's millions and millions of records going back and forth. And it's got significant advantages by having it architected that way, and I'm gonna hit that. All right, breaking those little modules down a little bit more here. Remember I said on the far right was a customer portal. You can see here, this is kind of where a customer, one of your customers, would come in and be able to, see and be able to take action on account management and, things like that. And we're going to demo all this. Multi-channel, it's what you would expect from a best-in-class, high-end commerce. It's got a PIM, it's got a CMS, right? It comes with native branded mobile apps, right? It's got punch-out capabilities, right? It's got multi-site, so if a distributor is running more than one brand, right, we can have multiple sites with their own URLs, multiple brands, single connection back to that platform that I talked about. One single point of maintenance for all of it. And then the operation portal, again, like I said, that's where the distributor operates. So that's all your transactional data. There's a CRM involved there, right? You've got a pricing engine, you got a ticketing system, you got the AR automation, you got AP automation, purchasing. There's also a couple other apps that you get. You get a driver app and a proof of delivery, driver delivery app and a proof of delivery app. So all of this is included in the subscription, all right? Really, technically, when we do price these things, it really goes down to, do you want multi-channel commerce or not? And some already have one and they just want to leverage the customer portal, right? Some say, yeah, I need all of it, and then we just go in with all three. So it really is only going to be two versions of this, one with the commerce, one without. All right, so with that, I'm going to switch over to a couple of different tabs here. So remember I said about GMS, I think right now they're somewhere in the $6 billion range, and that whole entire business is running on Kodaris. I forget how many different branded sites that they have, but they're into every single one of their locations, and they're running Kodaris on a day-to-day business, all right? One of our other ones I just want to call out here is HD Supply Canada, right? And you'll see they did a really, really good job on taking, this is the Kodaris website here, platform, right? And what they did a really good job on the design aspects of it to put something out that's really kind of consumer grade, right? Very nice, great job. So onto the demo itself, all right? This is our commerce site, right? And obviously it's branded Kodaris, but it's typical what you would see in any high-end, B2B site. So it has the ability to, it's got a PIM. So from the PIM, you have a taxonomy, right? And from the taxonomy, you'll have all the attributes and everything you can imagine at the SKU level. So when you look down here, you'll see you have all these different attributes that then become filterable, right? You have the ability to be able to put nice, rich descriptions in there. Because of the access to all of that data, right? Remember I said about that subset? We know exactly where the inventory is at any point in time. So you can do things like, so El Paso, Texas has got 25 in stock, or Elizabeth, New Jersey's got 2, or Seattle, Washington's got 25, right? In an API world, each one of these things at the pagination level, and I think there's 25 items on here or something like that, 1 out of 10, right? Their ability to be able to get all that information is going to be in sets of 25 at the pagination level. Here you can see I brought back 225 results. Right here, right now, as we sit and talk, right, I know the inventory and the pricing position on every single one of these items. Remember what I said about having that separate repository, all the transaction master files? This is where this comes into play. So I can do things like show the product is in stock because I know it. All right, I have all 225 items and I know what's in stock and where. I also know when I log in as a customer, we have all of the pricing tables that have come down as well. So you can imagine what the speed improvement would be rather than going through an API integrated direct ERP integration. All the data is there already. You're talking sub-second to be able to get this type of performance with this type of information. All right. So when you start to open up an item, it's got everything that you would expect, right? It's got the descriptions, the different part numbers. It has a supplier part number. If your customers have their own part number, that also can be stored. It's got the description. If there are other resources, let's say you have a MSDS sheet or your installation guide, or maybe you have a vendor link or something along those lines. Same thing with the specs. I don't have anything for this item, but you can imagine, or you'll be able to load up whatever you want in terms of documentation on that item. This is all managed and maintained in the PIM, and it would be displayed here. All right, very robust. The other thing I want to call out, right, is going to be these things called catalogs. This is very unique. I spent an entire career in commerce, right? I've seen different flavors and different forms of lists, favorites, whatever you want to call it, but I have yet to see anything like this. So here, if you think about it, these are company catalogs that can be established by the customer. So let's say that customer only, I'll go back, I'm an MRO bearing and PT guy, right? They have a certain set of products, machinery or equipment that is running in a plant factory. And they would only need across their entire division these 1,400 items. Well, you could make a catalog of the 1,400 items and share it with everybody within that organization. So now everybody's got access to those 1,400, right? So that's what you call a company catalog. Then you have the ability to, at the individual level, to create your own, right? And not only can you add different items to them, you can actually create individual taxonomies, how you want the stuff grouped and categorized. Very, very powerful when you start talking about, the personalization aspects of a commerce site. All right, so I'm going to keep moving along because we do have a lot to cover. Now, you also notice at the top of the page here, I got this thing here called, I do want to show one more thing before I say that. So if you notice on the shopping cart, all right, it's showing as empty. And it will allow, if you go into the item, add to cart, just like you would expect anything else. Kodaris has done a really good job on order automation. All right, we have actually started creating this way before AI was even a thing. So if you look here, right, we get this drag file or drag. I'm going to take a file, a purchase order, and I'm going to drop it right in there. Right, this could be a spreadsheet, PDF, or whatever. Right, it's going to go through. It's going to read that purchase order, that document. In this case, it's a PDF, and you'll see exactly what it did. Right, it identified all of those items that were in there. This is on their website, all right? The same capability exists on the sales and operation floor, including the order notes, right? Pretty cool. So anyway, all right. So that being said, all right, the other thing I want to bring to you or go to is when I launch the orders or this launches the customer portal. This is what your customers will see, okay? Everything there is to know, just so happens I have to be set up under 4 Presidents, that's my company, right? So in here is every single order that has ever been placed within 4 Presidents, right? It's not just the orders that have been placed on the web, it's every order that has made its way into the ERP. Remember, we sync up every couple of minutes, right? So whether they come in web, EDI, XML, smoke signal, I could care less. If they're in the ERP, they're going to make its way to here. So this is where they can come and they can manage all of their orders. So when you take a look at a screen like that, you're like, wow, that's pretty amazing. All right, it gets better, right? So if you start taking a look at, we bring over all those transaction files. Remember I said that? We also bring over almost all of the fields along with it. So now you can start to customize this view, right? By what you want. Maybe you want to see whether it's been invoiced, right? Or maybe you want to see it's been on the way, right? You can actually add those fields. You hear the invoice on the way, and I don't want it there. I want it over here, right? So you can actually start to move this thing around. And then what you can do is you can actually save that view, right? For a couple ways. One, you can do it for yourself. So when you log in, it's going to be the view. But if it's that good and you want to share it with your entire company, that's fine too. You can just select this box. And then when they come in here, they select that view, you name it, whatever you want, and away we go. All right, pretty cool, right? The other thing you can do, okay, is the spreadsheet view. People love spreadsheets, right? This is your way to be able to get in here. And if you look, it's got all the features and the functionality that you would expect in any spreadsheet type view. All right. So from there at the orders, all right, you can start to say, okay, you know what, I want to take a look at a particular order. And let's say I want to go to 2370. So you can click on it. And from here, right, now I'm going to get a copy of the actual order itself. I have some things I can do with it, right? I can add it to a list. I can add it to a catalog. I can reorder it, right? I can print it, right? The other thing it's going to do, it's going to show me all of the items. This is funny because this just happens to be the order that I drag and dropped on the commerce site, right? So you'll see all of the items in spreadsheet mode here. The other thing it's going to do, if there's any files associated with it, all right? Here, this happens to be that purchase order that I just brought in, okay? So there's a copy of it, okay? So that's there for them. Also, remember I said earlier about you get a driver delivery app and a proof of delivery app that comes with the platform, with the suite, okay? So if the driver did take a picture and upload it and associate it to this order, there's a picture of the delivery for that, right? And again, if there's any associated orders or anything that goes along with that. So that's on the order side. You have the ability to search, you have the ability to filter, right? You can actually download if you want to take a particular order or orders, right? You can download and export them out and then import them into, maybe you have some other system that you need to use this for, all right? Pretty cool stuff. The other thing I want to bring up, and obviously you see there is a ton in here. I'm not going to be able to hit everything, but I'm going to hit some of the big ones. Is going to be the employees, right? So typically on a commerce site, you would, at least back when I started, all right, managing who had access to that website always fell onto the distributor, right? Customer would say, hey, here's my list of my 10 people that I want. Oh, and by the way, I don't want this one to have purchasing capabilities, or this one can only buy if they got over, anything over $500. I want it approved, right? So that always fell onto the distributor. Here, the employee or the customer can manage their set of employees. So let's assume Tiffany is the supervisor, all right? So Tiffany, again, you'll see there's all the columns, right? And it's going to be, this view is going to be consistent throughout the whole platform here. So if I go into Tiffany, right, here's going to be all of her information about her, contact, address, right? Now we start getting into things like position, the title. Is she accounts payable contact? Does she have the ability to pay? See, now I can start to assign some permissions and capabilities to Tiffany, right? Does she have account access? What about permissions, right? All of this stuff is self-manageable by the customer. Not only that, but they can start to dictate what do they want and be able to, again, back to the personalization aspect. Okay, I want notifications when an order was placed or an order was delivered. I want to have both come in text and email. So the customers can actually manage what they have access to and what types of notifications they want to receive, okay? Open invoices, this is where we get into the payment portal aspect of it, probably one of the bigger draws to this customer portal. You'll see on this one, these are all the open unpaid invoices, or at least the invoices that are within the AR system. You can set up the ability to have different aging buckets, right? Period one, but they can very easily be 0 to 30, 31 to 60, right? 61 to 90, over 90 to or 120, whatever, right? This is the way we have them set up. But from here, you'll be able to see, I can drill down and select and say, just give me those invoices that make up that $117,000, right? So if I want to, all right, again, I'm the customer. I said, okay, yep, that one looks good. That one looks good, right? Now you'll see over here, right? And I'm just going to add a field in here, right? Invoiced amount, right? And I'm going to bring that over so you can see what I'm going to do here, right? So let's say that you'll see the invoice for 2017-99 is for $5,000. But anyway, the customer is going to short pay. Again, completely optional. If you don't want them to allow short pays, it's just a configuration setting. My point is you have the capability to do it. So not only can they short pay, but they actually put a reason code in there as well. And then they can actually back that up even further with a particular comment, right? So those comments, when we get over to the sales and operation portal, which is where you as a distributor are going to live, all of this stuff is going to follow, okay? So let's say we go through all of this and say, okay, now I'm ready to roll, right? I want to do my action. I want to pay these selected invoices, right? So you'll have the ability, again, and this is the payment methods of which this customer has set up, right? And you also notice one thing here, we are fully certified with surcharging and convenience fee program. So if that is something of interest to you, we certainly can't support that 100% right out of the box, right? So you'll be able to do that, be able to pay them. The other thing you'll be able to do is you'll be able to set them up for payments into the future, right? And here I have all my invoices selected, but I want to pay them, maybe next Friday, okay? And it would initiate that. So very, very powerful stuff. You can actually go into a particular invoice here, right, to get more information about it. All right, here happens to be a copy of it, and you can print it there, right, or the customer can, and be able to do things like that, right? The other aspect here is be able to take deposits. Some distributors do it like if it's starting a big job and maybe need $5,000, $10,000 to start the project, buy material or whatever. They can actually key in the amount, and depending on the payment method, they can take a deposit. It will go into their account as unapplied cash and be able to use against future invoices as it comes down. Okay. Documents. This here is very useful for a customer. Let's say they have a sales tax exemption certificate. This is something they can upload on their own, any type of statements, things like that, right? So this is an area where they can actually upload documents, and you will be able to see them also on the sales and operations aspect of the platform, okay? So that's that. And the thing I wanted to share with you, so if you think about it, even though this is a commerce site, okay, the customer portal is really its own separate entity. So we do have a couple of customers that are running different commerce sites. I wouldn't recommend it, right? But they are running different commerce sites, but they do have that link up there to be able to leverage the customer portal with their existing e-com solution. Their e-com solution essentially sits on top of Kodaris. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to log out of here. Okay. And then I am going to log into the sales and operations portal. Now you have to remember this is where you as a distributor would operate, right? So first thing you do, you come in, right? There's home, there's a dashboard, right? So we have recently viewed. These are all the things that you can get into. You can actually customize this any way you want, right? But from there, you can go into things. Well, okay, I need to see all of my orders, and these are all of them by the different customers. You have the ability to search and refine, basically I want to pull up a particular customer, or you have the ability to, a certain type of web number or order number, all right? You'll have the ability to do that. You also have the ability to see all this information in a spreadsheet view, okay? We already talked about that, right? Again, with the view here and having all of the data elements, because there's a lot here, and depending on your role, you may need a different view. So this gives people the ability to customize the view of what they have. So if I go down here and let's say I'm very interested in this 2370, right? I can actually open up that item, or I can select that, right? And from there, I can actually download that particular order as a PDF, right? Or select that, or the customer or that particular document as a PDF. From there, I can actually open up the order, okay? Now here is all the details, right, of this particular order. So here we have all the billing information, the delivery, all of that, right? But then we get into, right, all of the items that were on that order. Look familiar, right? And what I want to show you, if you do have these things grouped in PIM, with a particular category structure, you can start to see across how the order breaks down. I don't have this thing set up. We're talking demo data here, but you can see how something like that could work, right? The other thing you can do here, right, is you can add additional items to it, right? You can toggle some notes, right? Show and hide columns, right? We went through all of that, all right? If you had any, like I said, on the customer files, right? This is where, remember on the customer portal, they had uploaded an image of the delivery. This is it right here, okay? So the mirror opposite of the customer portal, but you also need to have that information to go along with it in order for you to do your job, right? The other thing you can do, again, is you can actually pay the order, okay? If they do have a vaulted payment method in here, right, you can actually pay it on their behalf. Or the other thing that you can do is you can actually email, right, this order, right? If I hit configure, okay, it's actually going to send an email. You put in the, obviously the two, but see a little button, review and pay. It's going to take them right to that window that I showed before, where they can actually apply whatever payment method to this particular order. Okay. So again, back to my point here, anything that you guys are doing manually today should be able to be digitized, and that's the approach that we've taken across the platform. Okay. All right, let me see what else I got here. So from there, we can start getting into, the customers, right? There is a CRM, all right, that we talked about. So in here, you'll be able to look at all of your different customers. Like, let's say I'm 4 presidents, right? I can actually do things like here. If I am an inside sales or CSR, right? I want to be able to create an order for that particular customer. And here I can actually add an item, right? The other thing I can do is do this little thing here where I can drag and drop that in and be able to create an order that way. All right, pretty cool. So back to the CRM, right? So if we go back to the companies, right? So you can actually start to look at all of the information specific to that particular company. So it happens to be 4 presidents, but here would be a list of all the open invoices, any vaulted payment methods, any deposits if there were any, right? Any customers in our world is users, right? So this is all of what the users would be, right? Any emails, orders, quotes, things like that. So everything you would expect in a CRM. All right. On the AR side, right, we're going to get into the kind of the accounts receivable here. This is where an AR person would come in here, and all this stuff would be in here in terms of how these things were paid, right? Here, you'll have the ability to customize this screen. So maybe you have a clerk that wants it set up a separate way, right? You'll have the ability to take all the data, they'll be able to download it, take it as a spreadsheet, right? You have options up here to issue a credit, all right, verify the bank account. The other thing you can do here, if I back up, right, is let's say the view, you have one clerk who's interested in say, you know what, I'm just going to settle up on the Visa MasterCard activity. You can create a sticky filter for that. The next clerk comes in and they're going to be saying, I want to do all the Amex, and the other one is going to want to do ACH. So you can see how easy this would be to be able to set up something for all these different views depending on the person's role and responsibility. All right. So I just wanted to give you guys a flavor. There's obviously, if you look down the left-hand side here, there is a lot more. Actually, I do want to share one thing with you. So on the PIM, I did mention it, right? So it is a very robust PIM. So if you look at something along the lines like, here's all the items, I don't have any idea how many are in here. But let's say I wanted to look up, a DeWalt, right? And I got that chop saw, right? And I want to be able to say, okay, you know what? Let me see what it would look like on the website. You can go right to there, right? The other aspect of it is to be able to drill into that particular item, right? And you can start to see where all the enrichment aspects of that comes into play. So here's the kind of the header type title stuff. Then you get into the description, headers, footers, attributes, all right? And then if there's any SKUs underneath that particular product, right, this is where they would be. All of the attributes for that particular item would be here. And the other thing that's pretty cool is to be able to have related products. So yeah, I want to sell that chop saw, but it would be great if I could offer some safety glasses or different goggles, or in this case, a ratchet or something along those, a hard hat, something along those lines. So when they are on the site and they pull that particular item up, these things are going to show, customers have bought this, have also bought that. Okay, very, very powerful stuff. The other aspect of it is going to be the CMS. All right, this is the Gutenberg Gutenberg editor. So in here is what you would expect for any state-of-the-art CMS. You have the ability to manage and maintain your themes. Okay, you have the ability to do manage your sites. Okay, different menus. You got the header, the footer, right? Being able to go in there and do this. So it's very, what you see is what you get. Very simple, but it's robust enough to be able to manage. And all of the sites that we put out have used this. Okay, so it's very, very popular tool. Let me get back here. Okay. All right. So with that, I'm going to go back to, that's kind of where I wanted to go. I did want to leave a little bit of time here to talk about AP automation. Very hot right now. We're just coming out with it, and Mike is going to walk us through exactly what that means.
Thanks, Brian. If you don't mind, Brian, just jump back to the previous slide. I think just to reiterate, I mean, Brian went through obviously not a complete demonstration of what we're listing on this slide, but a pretty high level view of some of the larger capabilities. And I think when we think about how Kodaris can support, work as a complementary solution to your ERP. The goal across the board for technology is, are there opportunities to increase revenue, to create happier customers? And we saw a lot of that with the customer portal and the multi-channel commerce. And at the same time, we're looking for those opportunities to increase operational efficiency. And so when we start to think about customer self-service, the ability for them to go in and manage their accounts, the simplification of the capture of payments from the customer, or as you saw, the creation of sales orders that are coming in from the customer through the order automation capabilities within Kodaris. These are the big opportunities. And of course, then, as Brian has already referenced, accounts payable automation. And I think anybody who's been working in distribution for any period of time knows that this has been a hot topic for years. It's one of those areas of the business where, it's where the document comes in, the invoice comes in from the vendor. If everything matches, why does anybody need to touch it? Why do we need to go rekey information? There's obvious opportunities for operational improvement that reduces costs. It allows you to take those folks who maybe are spending time literally keying information in, transposing it from one document to the system, and put them on more strategic or customer-facing initiatives, those things that can add value to the organization. So, when we get into AP automation, it really complements this whole digitization of the distributor. So, Brian, you can jump to the next slide. That'd be great. No real demo this afternoon. This is really just an introduction of how Kodaris approaches AP automation for the distributor. So I'm going to talk through some of the capabilities, some of the steps in the process. And certainly with this topic or any of the topics that Brian's discussed so far in the webinar, we'd love the opportunity to get together and discuss in more detail with anybody who's interested. But when we talk about AP automation, there's a few key steps. And the other thing I want to point out is we really like to take a topic like this, or an area where technology has influenced distribution historically, and not only replicate what's been done over time, but think about it from a new perspective. How can we help our distribution customers be more effective in how they take advantage of these tools? So, I'll kind of call that out as we go through the different steps in this AP invoice automation process. The first thing for us is really, and for you, the distributor, is to really understand how the invoices are delivered to you from the vendor. And once we understand that, we'll configure the Kodaris system to be able to consume those invoices. So a simple example, if you have an AP invoice inbox, we can read that inbox. We can pull in not only the email, but the associated documents into Kodaris, so that we're logging those communications and starting to capture the invoices, the invoice documents themselves. So once we've got the documents in Kodaris, now we're using a combination of different tooling. So of course, we leverage Amazon Web Services. We know AWS puts tons of money, billions of dollars into their platform, into modernizing and providing innovative tooling. So we'll take advantage of AWS tooling. In this example, we're using Textract, but we're also taking advantage of tooling that Kodaris has built. So Kodaris Power Tooling for AI automation. And this actually has been out there in the Kodaris world for years. It was initially used for sales order automation, still used for sales order automation, but we're able to take advantage of some of those capabilities on the AP side as well. And what's important to understand here is, while we're leveraging these different artificial intelligence tools to read and understand the documents, we'll continue to look at what tooling's available. If we find that there's innovative new tooling capabilities, or Kodaris is able to develop something in-house that is more efficient, more cost-effective, more streamlined process, we'll take advantage of that. So we're not necessarily locked into any one tooling or one tool set or another. Interestingly, we had a customer or two where we turned on the We turned on the faucet, we started reading the invoice, the emails, and started reading those documents. And we saw anywhere from an 80 to 90% success rate just using the AI tooling that I described in terms of matching and creating the invoice detail inside of Kodaris. Once that those inbound documents are read, what's nice is we're capturing that information in Kodaris, and Kodaris really can become a pre-processing engine. And the reason that this is we're able to do this is something that Brian mentioned earlier. We're replicating ERP data. We've got the vendors in Kodaris. We've got the purchase orders and PO receipts. We've got the sales orders. We've got the products. We've got the vendor and customer pricing. So we've replicated that from CloudSuite distribution or from your ERP into Kodaris. So we can start to pre-process and do some AP matching well in advance of pushing the invoice detail into the ERP. So if you want to jump to the next slide, Brian, you know, when we think about matching, and anybody who's gone down the path of AP automation understands this, we're matching on several different data elements. We're looking, does the PO number match from the AP invoice we just received to the POs in the system? Do we see subtotal or invoice total matches? Do we see product number, quantity, cost matches? And we can actually define what qualifies as a match. So I know in many cases I've worked with distributors where they said, Mike, the product number that the vendor sends on the invoice isn't typically going to match. They've got their own part number. We don't have all the cross references set up, and we're having to manually intervene when that product ID doesn't match. Okay, well, are we confident if we get a quantity and cost match against that PO that we can assume the product ID? Do we want to automate the creation of the cross reference? So there are opportunities to, in the implementation process, configure the matching rules that are used to determine when the vendor invoice matches up to an existing PO or PO receipt, or potentially multiple POs. As part of this matching process and the creation of the document and the vendor invoice, now that we've got the data, we understand the vendor, the PO number, we can actually sync those. If you choose, we can sync those and send those AP invoice documents up to Infor Document Management fully indexed. So we'll populate the attributes in the IDM document so that it's quickly, easily accessible when you're working inside of CloudSuite distribution. And then here's where we get another one of those areas where we've got some unique capabilities that maybe differentiate from some of the other AP solutions that are out there. So we can actually embed a rule or have a rules engine embedded where we can start to apply those rules in this pre-processing piece of the process. So Brian, one more slide and a few more things to talk about. So when we say pre-processing rules, what do we mean? Just some examples that we've seen and heard from the customers we work with. One was, we have a customer, their vendor will give them a discount if they hit those purchase target levels. So maybe they hit a dollars target or they hit a quantity or volume target, they're able to take a discount where they always buy to that target. So what they're doing is they're putting the discounted net price as the purchase price on the line item for the PO. The problem that is when that vendor sends the invoice, they've got the full price as the unit price on the line item, and they've got a whole order discount under the subtotal. So guess what? Now my vendor invoice doesn't match my PO. Now somebody's got to manually intervene. They've got to make the adjustments. They've got to override the tolerance issues. So what we're able to do in this pre-processing within Kodaris is we can say, all right, if you can tell us the vendor or the product or the value to meet or whatever those criteria are, we can take in that example that whole order discount from the vendor PO, and we can apply it in a prorated fashion across all the line items. Now you've got vendor invoice net costs on the Kodaris invoice that we're going to import that's going to match the PO net cost at the line item level, and I don't have to manually intervene. I was able to make that adjustment in advance. Just another example of some of these pre-processing rules that we can think about. Often there are add-on charges, there are additional charges on the vendor invoice that maybe weren't recognized on the PO itself. So again, we're going to have a discrepancy between the two documents. One very specific example of that was we have a customer who does a lot of drop ships or direct orders. And when they get that direct order direct order invoice from the vendor, inevitably there's a freight cost associated with that invoice. Now today, if I process that invoice through, including the freight, there's a nice feature in CSD that says, go ahead and bill that freight across to the customer. The challenge, though, that this customer had, this distributor had, was, well, geez, we not only want to bill the customer for that freight on the drop ship, we want to mark that up. And today, there's no easy way to do that in an automated fashion. There's manual intervention that has to happen to get that marked up freight onto the customer sales order so that they're invoiced the freight cost plus. So here, what we can do, remember, we've got the sales orders, we've got the purchase orders, we've got the products, we've got the vendor invoice now. We can actually look at the PO, recognize the tied sales order, take the freight from the direct ship invoice, apply a markup, and write that back into the PO header via the APIs. So now that billing for that sales order, for the freight for that particular sales order has been updated with the add-on of the freight plus the markup. And now when I push that vendor invoice in, it's going to match. It's going to say there's a customer sales order tied to this. Go ahead and invoice the customer. The freight's already been added. And so what we've done is we've taken a process that was very manual, that somebody had to go in, figure out the calculation on the markup, pull up the customer sales order, add the add-on with the marked up freight before they could reconcile the accounts payable invoice. We've automated that process through Kodaris prior to the AP invoice being pushed to CSD or to your ERP. So just some examples of some of those pre-processing rules that can be put in place. And if we go back to one of the things Brian talked about in the very beginning, this idea that 10 to 20, in the distribution world, 10 to 20% of the functionality really is going to need to be tailored based on the business process. And our goal is to help our customers to solve that 10 to 20% without really sacrificing that best practice business process that they've put in place. Just to round out this whole workflow from an AP automation perspective, once we've done the matching, we've applied the rules, we're going to generate the BOD, the XML business object document, and that's going to be sent to CloudSuite distribution for AP processing, just as if you had an EDI relationship with the vendor. That electronic file is going to move into CSD. It's going to push through the AP invoice center. It's going to follow all the vendor tolerance rules that you've defined if you've got those set up, and allow you to create the payable or manage the exception. So just a really quick overview. I know that's 10 minutes or less of how we're approaching AP automation. Some of it's probably similar to what you've seen with other solutions, but I think you're also seeing the additional capabilities that Kodaris can bring in enabling a more robust capability and bringing more automation without sacrificing your current process. So not sure if there were any questions. I don't see any questions in the queue.